Today, we're reacting to the interview everyone is talking about, Candace Owens versus Piers Morgan. It gets intense as they clash over what really happened to Charlie Kirk and whether there's a massive cover-up happening right under our noses. I've cut this down to the absolute must-see moments. Let's dive in.
End of another year.
Yes, and what a year it's been. Not least for you. It's fair to say your fame continues to rise. Infamy, some would put it. But you're always a welcome guest on Uncensored. Let's get to this extraordinary meeting that you had with Erica Kirk. Uh, it came right after we saw her say in that CBS town hall, "You should stop. Just stop with the conspiracy theories." So, who approached who about you guys actually getting together?
I was approached by Turning Point after Blake Neff, who works on Charlie's show, sort of fumbled this invite. I'd almost say it was a fake invite publicly, and then in the middle of the night said, "Oh, Candace is not able to be here tomorrow," and they never messaged me. And I think there was quite a bit of public backlash with how they went about it. It's just not the way that we try to set meetings. And so what happened after was they reached out to me, said Erica would agree to do a live stream, just the two of us. And then after Erica's PR blitz, they reached out again and said that they felt that it was better for us to meet one on one, as opposed to us sitting down having Megyn Kelly moderate, which was the idea originally.
Right, and so where did you have your summit meeting?
At a hotel here in Nashville.
And a lot of your, as you know, a lot of your supporters, fans of your show, think that you may have been lured into a trap. Did anything while you were there make you think you were being lured into a trap?
I don't know that a lot of my fans think that I was being lured into a trap. I think ahead of time they had some concerns, obviously, because I think in general, after you see a public assassination and you start tracking so many lies that are happening, there's going to be an understandable amount of angst that people feel. And I certainly felt the angst as well. I've obviously been very clear that I am suspicious of some of the characters that are at Turning Point USA. So I totally understand why the public was concerned.
When you saw Erica, she was obviously angry about you in that CBS town hall. What was her demeanor like when you met her?
Well, I don't think that she thought she was angry in that. I think maybe that was the characterization from the public. I certainly thought she was angry as well. And she sort of clarified that she was a bit annoyed by the questioning, the way in which Barry had set up the question with the podcaster Candace Owens, which I think was definitely being driven more by Barry Weiss's feelings towards me, long running feelings towards me, than it was perhaps for the benefit of CBS and trying to pretend to be an impartial journalist. So I think she was frustrated by the line of questioning, is what she explained to me.
So, how would you categorize the 4.5 hours? If you were looking at it in totality, what was the tone of the conversation? What do you think you both got out of it?
Well, for me, answers to the questions of trying to understand why there were so many turning point lies and why instead of people acknowledging that these are lies, I felt that there was this $1 billion psychological operation to convince people that Candace is just crazy. These are lies. These are made up. And so I was very refreshed that they owned up to the lies. That was a great first step. And I think what motivates that? Maybe because despite having what I would assume to be the best PR agents and crisis PR agents in the world, we're moving toward a different world where people don't really care, if you are friends with the people at what is it, WME and CAA and what they can do for you. That sort of power is ineffectual in this day and age. And so I think they recognize that and that the public simply doesn't believe the story that they've been fed, and the psychological operation to convince us not to believe our own eyes or to trust our common sense instincts has failed. And I think on their end, they got more clarity on how I figured out certain things, more clarity on why I am convinced that there are people that are inside of Turning Point that are dirty. And I was able to share more with them off record. And I think that they got more clarity in exchange.
Before we get into some of the sort of specifics, Is there not a danger here? I've already seen it in some of the reaction from people that follow your show. Is there not a danger that in seeking to be the one that exposes the truth, and I don't know the truth about what happened to Charlie Kirk. I work on the assumption that this lone, twisted weirdo Tyler Robinson killed him for whatever reason, and I suspect personally that is how this will play out. However, I have an open mind in the sense that we still don't really know what happened with President Kennedy's assassination. I found the attempted assassination of Donald Trump very odd in the way that that's been handled by the authorities and so on. I'm not naive as a journalist of 40 years. I'm not naive enough to say every single thing you've been saying is obviously baloney because I don't know. And we'll get to some of the more specific details. But is there not a danger, Candice, that by having a 4.5 hour private meeting rather than doing it in public, that all you're really gonna do, collectively actually, you and Erica Kirk, is fuel the conspiracy theories about what you may or may not have discussed in that meeting, what part of the stuff that you've been broadcasting on your show she agrees with and doesn't agree with, and so on. Is there not a danger this is the least transparent way of going about trying to get solutions here?
Well, I'm a very transparent person, so my preference was to do it publicly, but I took the offer, obviously, to have any conversation because if I hadn't done that, then I think everything I'm in doing would have appeared disingenuous. Like, oh, Candace is pretending that she wants answers to her questions, but when she got this offer, she suddenly said she didn't want to go because it wasn't public. They would have felt like I was moving the goalpost. So I was willing to take anything. And from their viewpoint, they felt like after the CBS News and the Fox News hit that Erica did, it was my understanding was that they felt that it was a good idea to bring the temperature down first by having us sit down and communicate. And that doesn't mean that they necessarily say, "Oh, that's it. Now we're not going to have any other public discussion." I'm hopeful they will. I think they should. I totally agree with you. More transparency, the better.
Who else was in the meeting? Erica was there. Who else was there?
Justin Strife, who is the COO of Turning Point USA, and my husband was only there for a portion of it, and my cousin.
So there are no lawyers, for example.
No, no lawyers. But they did phone their lawyer because I asked the question. I was like, "Look, I'm open to being wrong. Obviously, if there is something which I think the media was kind of hinting at that they had more, but they couldn't share it with the public." I said, "I'm happy to keep my mouth shut, and I want to feel good walking out of here that there is something there. There is some sort of a smoking gun, and I will tell viewers just to be patient." And so they did call one of the lawyers working on this case, and it was not convincing at all. He said, effectual, in effect, all we had is what the public has seen and we won't know more because we're investigating and looking for more. And so that just made me go, why is everybody being so over the top and ridiculous and using words like the evidence is overwhelming? It was Tyler Robinson when they don't have anything that's overwhelming to show. But it's they didn't see they don't have a video of him taking the shot, which I think was something that I assumed like, okay, there's all these cameras. Maybe they actually have that video and they're waiting for a moment to release that to the public. They don't have that. Or at least I can say Erica's side has not seen that and the lawyer communicated to me that they would not have access to that until earliest would be May, that right now they're just investigating just like we're doing back at home.
And you said that your motive for going to the meeting was that you would be able to come out and tell the world Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. So are you in a position to say that? Do you believe as a consequence of your 4.5 hours with Erica, do you believe that it is now most likely that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk?
Absolutely not. I haven't seen one piece of compelling evidence that Tyler Robinson scaled the rooftops like Spider-Man on a college campus that he didn't go to, and fired one shot, a magic bullet shot, and killed Charlie Kirk. I have not seen one piece of compelling evidence. In fact, I've seen more compelling evidence to the contrary.
The husband.
Well, I think that in her recent PR blitz, she sort of communicated that she trusted her team and her lawyer was using kind of the same rhetoric that the media has been using, where, there's really, this is like, it's overwhelming. Maybe he didn't say the word overwhelming, but he was like, it's very clear, I think is what he said in particular. And then I pushed back and I said, what's clear? The affidavit? That's all you guys have? And I did tell him, If you would never be my lawyer. because it's just, a lawyer that's just kind of giving you adjectives, and I don't need a cheerleader. I need someone to be practical and to say, we don't have anything yet. I think the communication should be, we are hopeful that throughout this investigation, we are going to uncover more evidence that linked Kyler Robinson to this crime. I do feel confident that he was involved in some capacity on that day. As I have said many times on my show, I was the one who broke the story that he was at the Dairy Queen throwing out clothes, a local Dairy Queen, throwing out clothes in a nearby cemetery. And so I do think he was involved, and multiple people were involved that day. And I think he did pick up clothes. I had communication with Lance's family. I had communication with Tyler Robinson's family. And for some reason, Lance is being protected, which I find to be very strange. His own family thinks he's guilty of more, and they find it weird that the feds kind of glossed over him, almost as though he was a Fed operative, like he was working on behalf of them. And we've caught the feds have lied a lot. It's just a fact. Turning Point USA people have lied a lot. That is a fact, which they have agreed to. They said that these were mistakes, but whether a mistake or not, the public was lied to. So yeah, this obviously, matters deeply to me, and it's just absurd that people would think that I'm doing this for clicks. I know Charlie. I knew Charlie. Charlie and I are very close, and it has been one of the most disgusting things ever that people first and foremost tried to start this psychological operation that Charlie and I hadn't spoken since 2019. They've lied about virtually everything that I've said on my podcast. I'm not going to let this go. Okay. I can't, we don't live in a country that is the embodiment of democratic principles. If Charlie Kirk gets publicly executed and the media apparatus is doing everything they can to cover the tracks. I would say to cover the tracks by demanding that there is no further inquiry into what happened on that day. That is not a
The thing,
country
okay,
I can get behind.
some of the details, because it seems to me you've put up a lot of theories, but a lot of them don't seem to have a clear conclusion from you about what you actually think happened. I mean, you've been all over this now ever since Charlie was killed. What do you believe happened to him? Who do you think killed him?
So I can't tell you definitively who pulled the trigger. I'm not going to lie to audiences and just put something out there that's not real. Um, but what I can say is I feel convinced that the feds were involved. I can tell you that. I think the feds were involved in staging a cover up. I think Cash Patel knows what happened and did not happen on that day. I am convinced by me being told by people that are feds that he is not acting right and that he is not wanting to share any information. Just a couple of people are allowed to even see anything. A Fed told me that they can't even touch the Charlie Kirk file without risk of being fired, and that he's grown increasingly mad. The U.S. Marshals that were there when they were doing the quote unquote manhunt for 33 hours said that Cash Patel effectively sent them on a wild goose chase, which is what was signaled to the public when he said, "We got him," and it was actually the wrong person. And so it caused people to stop looking because they were convinced that they had the shooter. They felt that that was in order to allow the real perpetrators of the crimes to get away. I
But it could
honestly,
that
yeah,
could just be the fog of the immediacy of these things. We've seen it at Brown University, exactly the same thing.
it,
They thought they had the
that,
killer.
that's
They thought they had the killer. It turned out to be the wrong person, right? It doesn't mean there's any great conspiracy by the feds to cover anything up. And again, even if what you're saying is true, I don't know.
mhm,
Maybe you're right. If what you're saying is true, what is it they're covering up? You've so far intimated or inferred something weird involving Egyptian planes. So,
mhm,
well, what's that about? You've inferred perhaps Israeli involvement in some way. You certainly
mhm,
inferred a lot of Turning Point USA involvement. That's a lot of people getting involved here in the murder of Charlie
yeah.
Kirk potentially. But what I'm really curious about is, given you've been all over all this and you've been airing all these theories, well, which one is it? It can't be all of these things. Is it somebody?
Well, of course,
Is it someone at
it
Turning
can,
Point
and
USA? Yeah, I mean, who do you actually believe was
of
behind it?
course, it can be all of those things. And what's really ironic here is that there's a clip of Charlie in the last months leading up to his death where he speaks about the JFK assassination. And he says that multiple countries were involved, multiple people were involved, the LBJ was involved, the feds were involved. And he's correct. That is what it means. When there is a conspiracy, there are multiple people that are involved. Of course, there's not one person on a grassy knoll who shot JFK.
Well, it might
There's people who had agree with it, like, the Dallas police. Without answering your question, I mean, you're asking, why aren't you just going to point to one person? That to me, even that seems like a part of telling people not to believe their own gut. Obviously, for this to have been pulled off, there had to have been multiple people involved. There had to have been people at Turning Point that were complicit in having this happen. Now, who knows what their motivations are? Doesn't mean y- maybe this person's like, hey, I'm going to help you.
Okay, let me stop here. Hang on. When you say obviously somebody at Turning Point, you are accusing right now people that worked with Charlie Kirk at the company he built, which is now run by his widow. You are directly accusing people in that company of being complicit in his murder, right?
I want to just be very clear connecting that dot. So I said that when there is a conspiracy, of course there are going to be multiple people involved. So applying that same logic to JFK, right? Knowing, as I do, and as Charlie did believe that LBJ was involved, which then implicates the feds as having been involved, which then implicates the Dallas police station as being involved. I believe Israel was obviously involved, that they were the ones that wanted him dead for saying that what is now APAC should have to register under FARA. So there's motive. There are people that have to be involved on the ground that day. There are people that have to be willing to allow the perpetrators to get away. There has to be media that's complicit, and that's what literally Operation Mockingbird was. It was
But
established
you know the
to
problem? You know
protect
the
the
problem?
public.
Candace, here's the problem.
Well,
You,
let me
you,
just
hang on, hang on.
it was established.
No, but here's the problem.
So everything is say in this massive
You keep saying, and this is where people think you're prone to endless conspiracy theories for whatever reason. Is you keep using the phrase they have to have been involved. So by that yardstick, what you're saying is with JFK's assassination, and we recently had a lot of the files released, which did not conclusively prove any of these things, right? Now, again, I don't know what happened to JFK, but the one possibility you've not ruled in is it was just as simple as Lee Harvey Oswald. It might have been. We don't know. Right? So when you say the media to have been involved, then the Johnson to have been. My problem is you're stating all these things as fact.
63. So it's such a nonsense to say that it was Lee Harvey Oswald.
You
Actually,
don't know that.
that's just such a nonsense. Like, yeah, again, no, I do know it was not Lee Harvey Oswald acting by himself, and then that required national security to lock down the files, and that required the Fed to impart the CIA to impart Operation Mockingbird could diminish the public. That it was you can't go against there's a grieving widow. Don't look further
Yes,
into it. Don't believe your own eyes.
but let me just say, you're the candidate.
Was a grand conspiracy that killed JFK,
This is
and I am going to say that confidently.